behalf of Illinois Humanities, I'd like to invite you to tonight's program. I'm Paul Dorica, Director of Programs for Illinois Humanities. Now, our mission is to strengthen society by fueling inquiry and conversation about the ideas and work that shape our culture. But what does that mean? Well, what it means is that we partner with Thalia Hall, Revolution Brewing, and UIC's School of Art and Art History to bring you tonight's program, which looks at prison, punk rock, and political expression, both internationally and in Illinois. Now, if you enjoyed tonight's program, we ask that you tweet about it at hashtag Pussy Riot Talks. And in about a week, expect to get a survey from us. It's very quick, you can fill it out online, and you might win a seminary co-op gift certificate. Now, just a couple more things. I know, wow, it's great. Just a couple more things. Also, we've got t-shirts for sale. They're available in the back, so if you want to get a Pussy Riot t-shirt, please do. It all goes to support the causes that they believe in. And before I leave the stage, I want to thank one of the people who's really responsible for tonight's program, and that's the person who oversees all of our arts programming, Jane Beachy. That's the kind of response I was hoping for. Now, this is one of 6 programs that Jane is going to be doing for Illinois Humanities in the next 12 days. She's very talented, she's very tireless, and so I wanted to make sure that we thanked her tonight. And now, to introduce tonight's speakers, Lisa Lee.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Lee, and I'm the director of the UIC School of Art and Art History. And yes, there's like at least 100 of UIC students here, so welcome. And we are Chicago's urban public university. And we believe that in addition to social and economic rights, we also have creative rights and the rights to free expression. And I want to thank all of the artists and the art historians who are here in the office, I'm at the office too often, at Thalia Hall, for all the work that they do. So like many of you, I've been absolutely riveted and inspired by the video of punk prayer performance that took place on February 21st, 4 years ago today. Yes. And the performance that landed 3 of the members, including Masha, who is here with us today. I am always struck by the collective joy, the fierce sense of urgency, and the brilliant refusal to be understood and interpolated in a mainstream manner that this performance represents. Their countless guerrilla interventions in public spaces that are available on YouTube are a creatively brilliant and brave forum of anti-authoritarian expression against oppression, a surveillance state, and the increasingly repressive measures in Russia around a host of issues, including women's and LGBT rights. Tonight's event is part of Pussy Riot's activism and work on a global stage, where they have a radical message, an international rallying cry against patriarchy and its links to militarism and prison culture, a message which needs to be heard by an equally imperialist power like the United States. Yes, where we have a mass incarceration epidemic, the largest prison population in the world, a staggering 2.4 million people, a 500% increase over the past 30 years in prison, where 1 in 28 American children has a parent behind bars, where 1 in 3 black men can expect to go to prison in their lifetime, and where women of color are the fastest growing segment of the incarcerated population, increasing at nearly double the rate of men since 1985. It is particularly wonderful to welcome Pussy Riot to Chicago, where artists and activists working together, for example, with the Chicago Torture Justice Memorial, woo! Yeah, let's give a big round of applause for them. Where they struggled and won and passed historic legislation that provides reparations to over 110 black men tortured by the Chicago police. This achievement was absolutely monumental. Chicago is also the city where we have stayed protesting and shutting down streets, protesting against the impunity of police brutality and the lack of government transparency. And we continue saying the names of the people who've been killed. Tonight's event is part of the important international solidarity work that connect the dots between oppression in Russia and the oppression everywhere, and the call for more pussy riots against the patriarchy all over the world. Yeah. So before I actually introduce the members of Pussy Riot and also our wonderful moderator tonight, Coya Paz, I want to invite Alexander Chaparukin, that's how you're supposed to say it, to the stage. And Sasha, as he is lovingly known, is a Moscow music producer and a presenter and artistic director of international music and theater festivals all around the globe. And he actually played an incredibly pivotal role while Pussy Riot was in prison, visiting them in prison, but also generating support globally by artists and musicians to bring awareness to their cause. He has a doctorate in environmental economics, for also, as if that's not enough, and he is the president of the Association for the Support of Ecological Initiatives. He's been a really important cultural activist who's been sort of working tirelessly behind the scenes to raise awareness. So I want to really give him a really warm sort of welcome to Chicago, and he's going to introduce the film.
Good evening, Chicago. Actually, we've been very much surprised when Chicago was added to the list of our 9 events in the USA and became 10th event because it was made in the last moment, and I couldn't believe that with such a short notice so many people could get here. So thank you, everybody, to get here with such short notice. And we're really surprised and pleased. And since 1993, I brought many wonderful musicians from Russia and from many other republics of ex-USSR to Chicago audiences and Chicago clubs and Chicago festivals. But for the first time, I organize this kind of political and social event, and I'm very much impressed that you are so interested to discuss topics which are so dear for us, so interesting for us, so scary for us, and so hopeful for us, and so painful for us. So thank you very much for sharing this with us. And also, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the beginning of our event tonight. We wanted to show you the insider film called Pussy versus Putin. Yeah, it was made like in a way from inside the group, but it's rather old material, very interesting one. But finally, we decided to show you a shorter thing, which is the trailer, the 13-minute trailer of the most recent film, which is possibly the first ever attempt to show you the whole story of Pussy Riot in its entirety. And this is a friend of us, Evgeny Mita, the Moscow documentary film director. He really put together all chronicle, videos and his own interviews with Masha, Nadia, and Katya, the founders of the group, after their release from prison. And also he made very interesting parallels between whatever Pussy Riot has done and some historical Russian moments, even from the Tsarist Russia. And when I asked him to give us permission to show this film during our tour in America, first, his company said no, because they want to premiere this film in one of the major festivals in America. But finally, they made this 13-minute trailer in like 3 or 4 hours, and I was surprised how well they squeezed 1 hour, 36 minutes film to 13 minutes trailer. It gives you more or less clear understanding of what you can see in this film. And by the way, if there are people from film world here who can suggest us where we can show this film, some festivals or maybe some gatherings like this, some university audiences, you're welcome to come to me after the show, and I will be very happy to hear your ideas and maybe to communicate afterwards. And again, we are very, very thankful to all organizers, but I just want to make one small correction. There are no Pussy Riot T-shirts. Pussy Riot never sold any single Pussy Riot T-shirt ever. But they are T-shirts dedicated to particular political prisoners who are still behind bars in Russia. And Ksenia and Masha will explain you more about these very cases. And now I want to start, if it works, I want to start from my laptop, this 13 minutes trailer of the big film called Act and Punishment by Evgeny Mita. And pay attention on subtitles. I think the subtitles, they give you a very clear idea that this film is not only about actions and post-actions, but also about some very interesting art critical evaluation and historical evaluation of the significance of whatever Pussy Riot has done, let's say, in contemporary Russian history. Thank you very much.
Федосия Прокопьевна, она родилась в богатой семье боярской, и эта семья принадлежала к узкому кругу, приближенному к царю.
Надя и Петей мы познакомились на выставке в школе Родченко. Была семестровая выставка наша. И они, видимо, искали новых активистов, решили зайти в нашу школу.
И вообще я ехала в Москву, у меня была цель не только поступить на философский факультет, но и стать подмастерьем ученицей Пригова.
С Машей, собственно, мы познакомились в 2008 году, когда война была в расцвете, делала свои акции, самые известные. Мы хотели как раз сделать вот акцию в честь Ерофеева, в честь вот этого судебного процесса над запретным искусством. Была нехватка документаторов, и она согласилась документировать.
Подготовка к акции и все эти действия, которые я видела, которые я снимала, они интересовали меня в большей степени, чем, собственно, люди, которые это делают. И только потом, спустя какое-то время, я уже начала с ними знакомиться и, соответственно, выяснила, что у нас довольно много общего.
Как-то мы друг на друга обратили внимание, даже не знаю почему, наверное, потому что в группе «Война» была такая достаточно жесткая атмосфера в какой-то степени. Она была, может, наверное, полезна для акции, но была такая, странная, такая мачистская моментами атмосфера, где, естественно, страдали в основном мы с ней. Не было еще тогда ни четкой концепции, ни названия. И потом уже в 2011 году все это более-менее стало ясно, что это будет чисто женская группа феминистской направленности. Будет, естественно, художественная акционистская группа. В октябре увидели это заявление Медведева о том, что скоро у нас будет новый президент, его будут звать Владимир Путин. Естественно, всех это возмутило. Я помню, какой был всплеск в обществе, всплеск в оппозиционной среде. И мы поняли, что нужно действовать.
Школьные классы суют избирателей, в душных комнатах тухнут кабинки, пахнет потом и веет контролем, полы подметены, стабильность готова, освободи, освободи, освободи.
Юродивый – это герой, глаз народа, глаз Божий. Поэтому у русских юродивых довольно много обличений в адрес царя. Иван Грозный шел на Псков. Никола Солос его встретил перед городом с куском сырого мяса в руках, как встречают с хлебом с солью. И Иван Грозный, увидев кусок сырого мяса, возмутился, сказал, что я мясо не ем, сейчас Великий пост. А Никола Солос ответил, что ешь плоть своих людей, да, своего народа.
Красная площадь – это один из самых охраняемых объектов в нашей стране, в нашей столице.
Россия, мы существуем! Бум, Россия! Riot, riot! Выйди на улицу! Живи на красной! Покажи свободу! Гражданской злости!
Сразу же пошло в народ, увидели, что людям нравится. После этого мы, наверное, недели две каждый день давали интервью. Guardian, BBC, вот эти новостные гиганты.
У Владимира Путина наибольшие шансы стать президентом. Об этом заявил патриарх Московский и всея Руси Кирилл.
Мы решили, что 21 февраля мы пойдем в храм Спасителя. Это территория Путина, это его символ захвата просто религии уже Путиным. где буквально вот с площадки патриарх Кирилл призывал прихожан голосовать за Путина.
Что это еще за провокация? Быстро ушли
Активистки феминистской группы устроили 5-минутный концерт.
反普丁女子乐团 Pussy Riot 遭收押，口吃7年牢饭。
Ибо нет у нас будущего, если перед святынями великими мы начинаем глумиться. И если это глумление кому-то, полагаю, ложится на душу.
Надя, держись, Надя!
Настоящие мужчины. Свободу пусть стирает! Свободу пусть стирает! Свободу пусть стирает! Свободу пусть
хулиганство, которое заключается в грубом нарушении общественного порядка, выражающее явное неуважение к обществу, совершенном по мотивам религиозной ненависти и вражды и по мотивам ненависти в отношении какой-либо социальной группы лиц по предварительному сговору.
Судовая хвала пронесет сплошные крестный ход из черных лимузинов, школу к тебе идет проповедник. Иди на урок, принеси ему денег!
Вы признаете себя виновными по предъявленному вам обвинению? Толоконникова.
Нет, я не признаю себя виновной по предъявленному обвинению. А могу я пояснить, почему?
Вы все поясните.
Они вышли туда и начали там молиться. Молиться Богородице. Является ли эта молитва легитимной или нет? Это сложный вопрос, между прочим, даже с теологической точки зрения.
Непонятно, для чего нужно вызывать судебное заседание художников. Ваша честь, мы не рассматриваем дело относительно проблем современного искусства, актуального искусства, которые они могут сообщить суду. Это господин Ерофеев, художники, доктора. Они являются просто-напросто неотносимыми доказательствами.
Следующее, что можно сказать по поводу Pussy Riot, то это оживление или овеществление картин Малевича.
То, что сделали Pussy Riot в храме, это продолжение традиции юродства. Не случайно так много говорят о Pussy Riot, что они надели на свои головы маски, да, для того, чтобы сорвать маски с общества. История боярыни Морозовой, конечно, совершенно особая, потому что это невероятной силы противостояния, причем духовное противостояние женщины и власти. Женщины с одной стороны и власти, причем двуединой власти, государственной и церковной, с другой стороны.
Мы говорили о том, что они феминистки, и они считают вполне обоснованным подобный молебен, приравнивающий феминисток к Богородице. И что феминизм – это то, что допустимо Русской Православной Церкви. Все это не соответствует действительности, потому что известно, что является смертным грехом, как считают православные, к смерти души, в том числе все неестественные проявления человека, связанные с его жизнью.
Многие написали личные письма. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Flea, Энтони Кидис, Алекс Капранос из Франц Фердинанда, гитарист Роберта Планта Джастин Адамс. Совершенно разные люди. Маккартни для России, это для нескольких поколений советских людей, скажем, и постсоветских людей, это вообще главный артист всех времен народа. Ну, я ему написал такое очень страстное письмо. До суда остается 2 дня. Через час я получаю письмо Маккартни. Но это была такая информационная бомба. Маккартни поддержал Pussy Riot.
Вам предоставляется последнее слово.
Мне так жаль, что произнесено было такое количество слов, и вы до сих пор этого не поняли. Или вы лукавите, говоря о наших извинениях, как неискренних извинениях. Я не понимаю, что вам еще нужно услышать. Для меня лишь этот процесс имеет статус так называемого процесса. И я вас не боюсь. Я не боюсь лжи и фикции, плохо задекорированного обмана в приговоре так называемого суда.
Система не может скрыть репрессивный характер этого судебного процесса. Россия в очередной раз выглядит в глазах мирового сообщества не так, как пытается ее представить Владимир Путин в своих каждодневных международных встречах. Все обещанные им шаги на пути к правовому государству, очевидно, так и не были сделаны. А его заявление о том, что суд по нашему делу будет объективен и вынесет справедливое решение, является очередным обманом всей страны и мирового сообщества. Все, спасибо.
Мы в отчаянных обстоятельствах, но не отчаиваемся. Гонимы, но не оставлены. Открытых людей легко унижать и уничтожать. Но когда я немощен, то силен. Слушайте нас, а не Аркадия Мамонтова о нас. Не искажайте и не перевирайте все нами сказанное и позволяйте нам вступить в диалог и в контакт со страной, которая в том числе и наша, а не только Путина и патриарха. А то, что я хочу процитировать сейчас, это следующие строчки. «Откройте все двери, снимите погоны, почувствуйте с нами запах свободы». Все.
Уважаемая публика, мы не в театре находимся.
I get to introduce the speakers tonight. And, you know, Chicago has no shortage of amazing artists and activists, but there's no better pussy, perhaps, in Chicago to moderate the conversation tonight than the inimitable Coya Paz. Yeah. Coya is an assistant professor in the theater school at DePaul University, and she's Dr. Potts because she also has a PhD in performance studies at Northwestern University. And she also is the artistic director of Free Street Theater. Yeah, right? And the lead artist for the Poetry Performance Incubator at the Guild Complex. She is a founding member of Proyecto Latina and the co-founder of Teatro Luna. I have known Coya for over a decade now, and she is truly one of the most incandescent artists and teachers in the city, so we're extremely lucky that she agreed to moderate tonight's conversation. And now I'm thrilled to introduce and also to welcome Masha Alyokhina and also Ksenia Zhivago to the stage, 2 members of Pussy Riot. Yep. But wait, I'm going to tell you some more.
Hi.
I don't know. Do you want? I have a little bit more to say about them because you might not know about, the fact that Masha is also a published poet, and at the time of her arrest, she was actually a 4th-year student in school, and she's been declared a prisoner of conscience by Amnesty, and also is the founder of Zona Prava. And then also Ksenia, who has degrees both from Moscow and also in London, is a visual artist, and she is the project coordinator of Zona Prava. And they're going to tell you a little bit about this website, which has become one of the most important human rights portals in Russia for work around the penal system and the fight against injustice. So let's give one more warm welcome to them.
So one of the things that we realized as we were putting together tonight's program is that today is the 4-year anniversary of the punk prayer action. And so we thought we would start by noting that that's the case, and asking, as you were putting together that intervention, what did you think was going to happen compared to what actually did happen?
Thank you. Firstly, I want to say thank you for coming, for listening. And I would like to say sorry that because I will speak Russian mostly, because my English is much more, not so good. Окей. Да, действительно, сегодня 21 февраля, и сложно поверить, но, правда, 4 года назад мы были там.
Yeah, today is 21st of February, and it's hard to believe, but it's true that 4 years ago we've been there.
Я не думаю, что кто-то из нас ожидал того, что случится после, и также я не думаю, что на самом деле кто-то со стороны Путина ожидал того же самого.
I do not think that somebody of us expected of whatever would happen afterwards, but I also do not think that from Putin's side somebody expected the same.
Потому что, конечно, если посчитать плюсы и минусы, им гораздо выгоднее было бы не заводить никакого дела.
Because now if we count all pluses and all minuses, it would be much more profitable for them, for Kremlin, not to start any prosecution.
Но сейчас мы здесь для того, чтобы рассказать, в большей степени рассказать о тех, кто находится за решеткой, кого посадили после нас.
And now we are here mostly because we want to tell you about those who are still behind the bars and who actually were sent to prisons after us.
Нам в какой-то степени повезло, потому что мы были вот теми первыми, одними из первых людей, которых посадили за позицию, за политическое высказывание, потому что после нашего дела начались уже массовые посадки, массовые репрессии, и стало гораздо более понятно, что происходит с Россией.
In a way, in a certain extent, we've been kind of lucky because we've been the first ones who were punished because of our political positions. But now the mass oppressions started to happen, and now it's much more understandable what is going on in contemporary Russia.
So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the way that you are now working to raise awareness about the prison system in Russia.
Мы начали заниматься с тюрьмами после того, как сами оказались в тюрьме.
We started to take care of prisons after we occurred to be in prisons ourselves.
Потому что, оказавшись там, ты уже, во-первых, не можешь этого забыть, во-вторых, не можешь ничего не делать против этого, против этой системы.
Because after you've been there, first of all, you cannot forget it, and second, you cannot not doing something in this regard.
Стоит немножко пару слов сказать про те условия, в которых находятся российские заключенные. Это ужасные условия.
I have to say a few words about those conditions in which Russian political prisoners and all prisoners are in prisons, and these conditions are terrible.
Заключенные обязаны работать, у нас есть принудительный труд, работают они по 12-14 часов в день.
Our prisoners must work. It's obligatory, and they work up to 12-14 hours a day.
Работа заключается в том, что заключенный должен шить полицейскую униформу или униформу для армии.
The work is that inmate, the prisoner, has to sew a police uniform or military uniform.
И, собственно, в этой униформе потом сражаются те солдаты, которые, собственно, сражаются в войнах, которые сейчас ведет Россия.
And then the soldiers who participate in those wars of Russia nowadays, they use these very uniforms.
Но это довольно цинично.
It's rather cynical.
Да, то есть еда, во многих колониях еда испорчена, медицины нет вообще.
In many colonies, many penal colonies, food is really rotten, really bad, and medical care actually doesn't exist at all.
То есть моя какая-то правозащитная деятельность началась с обычных просьб, обычных заключенных, которые были вокруг меня, девочек, которые подходили и спрашивали: Маша, ну вот как бы на тебя вся надежда, только ты можешь что-то сделать с этим. Хотя они даже толком не понимали, почему вот именно я. Просто они обращались ко мне.
My personal human rights activity started in prison when the girls, my prison mates, they just asked me, Masha, could you help? Because we think that only you can do something with this. And I even don't understand why they decided from the very beginning that I might change something.
И после того, как мы победили в нескольких судах, после того, как моя голодовка была, в общем, довольно успешно завершена, я поняла, что можно менять систему, и тогда мы начали делать структуру.
After we won several lawsuits and after my hunger strike occurred to be rather, I would say, successful, then I realized that we should start the structure. By the way, let me add one thing. Masha, in her colony, she started four cases against violations of human rights in prison, against administration. I've been in several courts, and it was amazing. Maybe it's a record-breaking thing. She won 3 cases out of 4.
Ну и вот, да, Ксюша может получше рассказать о том, чем мы сейчас занимаемся, и даже показать несколько работ.
Ksenia is able to tell you better about what is our current work, current human rights work, and even to show you something.
So shortly after the Nadia's Masha release from prison, they, as she said already, they began a human rights project, which is now covering, it has 2 parts. The first part is an actual human rights project that provides legal help for prisoners. And the second part is called Media Zona. This is a news outlet that covers all the subjects of police violence, court hearings, and everything, similar things. So in 2014, when Media Zona started, our editor-in-chief said this thing, that current Russian politics are being done, are happening in courts. So this is why we're going to be covering all these stories to make people aware of what's happening. And what prisoners in Russia experience every day, and what we research is truly horrible. Because, for example, what Masha mentioned about medicine, one of the stories that we have heard just recently from one of the ex-prisoners, she told us, there is no doctor in a prison camp. And when someone requires a medicine or medical help or needs an injection of any kind of medicine, they call for another prisoner just to make the injection because the doctor is just not there. So people with no license, prisoners, they provide medical help for other prisoners. The other situation is violence happens and corruption is everywhere. And these are the cases that we really want to cover, and we really want to make them public, and we want people to speak about them, and we want people to know about them.
So one of the things that we were talking about a bit backstage is that we're in this moment where Russia and the United States are being positioned as international enemies. But the reality is that when we talk about prisons in Russia and we talk about prisons in the United States, we start to see that there are a lot of patterns in terms of the way that prisons are being used as cheap labor, the way that prisons are being used as a substitute for fixing real systemic problems. And I know that there are some specific cases that you're wanting to draw attention to, but before we look at some of those images, I'm wondering if you could sort of talk about the ways in which you think that what a prison is for, because it's not really to correct, right? And two, it makes sense that having been put in a prison and being exposed to this, that this becomes the issue that you've picked up. But I think a lot of people don't always make a connection between feminist action and the importance of working to end prisons as we know them. I know that's a huge question. Jump in any way that you like.
Да, действительно, вы просто очень правы в том, что говорите о новом железном занавесе, который скорее Путин и его администрация пытаются выстроить между нашими странами.
Yeah, you're right, speaking about probably the new Iron Curtain, which is rather Putin tries to build again between our two countries.
И нас, тех людей, которые сейчас выступают против Путина, нас называют врагами народа, иностранными агентами и так далее.
And we, those people who stand against Putin, now started to be called enemies of people, agents of foreign countries, and that's it.
И мне кажется, что на самом деле мы, те, кто объединяются по правозащитным делам, артисты, мы намного сильнее, чем те правительства, которые пытаются строить вот эти самые заборы.
And I think that we who get united, artists who unite in our human rights activity, we are much stronger than governments who try to build new fences.
Действительно, у нас есть много общих вещей, за которые мы боремся. И после того, как мы освободились уже, мы посетили довольно большое количество тюрем. В Европе и в Штатах тоже одну посетили.
We actually have many things in common for which we have to fight for, and after our release we visited quite many prisons in Europe and in the United States.
Мы были в Райкерс-Айленд, Нью-Йорке.
We've been in Rikers Island prison in New York.
И посещали там активистку движения Occupy Wall Street, Сесиль Макмиллан.
And we met Cecil McMillan, the activist of Occupy Wall Street movement.
Тогда ей грозило тоже, как и нам, 7 лет, и мы постарались сделать все возможное, чтобы ее освободить, и мы ее освободили.
She was threatened by 7 years in prison, as we've been threatened by 7 years in prison during our court process, and we've done whatever possible to free her, and we think we have freed her.
Вместе с тем мы познакомились тогда, хорошо познакомились тогда с движением Occupy Wall Street, и надо сказать, что это одни из самых классных вообще людей, которые я встречала в Штатах.
And we actually met and actually became quite good friends with the activists of Occupy Wall Street movement, and I would like to say that they are probably the most classy people I ever met in States.
И с каждой такой встречей, с каждым таким разговором ты понимаешь, что, собственно, вся вот эта пропаганда, все какие-то слова, которые каждый день говорятся, допустим, по нашему телевизору, они разбиваются вообще в пух и прах от одного слова, как бы нас друг другу.
And with each meeting like this, with each acquaintance and conversation like this, you see that all propaganda which is shed from the screens of our TV is immediately broken by just few words between people.
И поэтому мне кажется, что очень, очень важно говорить эти слова друг другу, строить вот эти мосты.
And that's why I think it's very important to say those words to each other. It's very important to build those bridges.
Просто между обычными активистами.
The bridges between just ordinary activists.
Вот. Ну, скажи про ЛГБТ.
Masha wants me to say a couple of words about the LGBTQ community in Russia right now, what the state of it right now, and the state of the fight that was very powerful and was very on its peak, I think, during the Pussy Riot trial. And unfortunately, right now, it's very quiet because all the international attention that LGBTQ community had a couple of years ago, it's all gone. And unfortunately, people have to leave the country, and people have to go back to the closets, and just to keep their children safe, just to keep their relatives safe. And right now, it's very easy. You can be easily killed for coming out, for making a public coming out in Russia. You can be easily kidnapped for this. And I know personally 2 people who were kidnapped after they came out or participated in the public protest or LGBT actions or whatever. I think the best thing that can happen to all the activists right now in Russia and in other countries is that if we stay connected, is that we can stay in touch and we can share the message, and the message can go across the audiences and different countries and different people. So everyone knows what's happening and everyone can protect everyone from the threats. So that's the point.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting is even that when we put up the Facebook invite for this event, there were some people who were saying, why do we need people from Russia to come and talk to us about prisons? We have prisons here in Chicago. We have activists in Chicago. That's what the talk should be about. And absolutely, Chicago has a thriving prison abolitionist movement, and people working very hard. A lot of the Black Lives Matters actions are around, asking this question of why is 40% of Chicago's budget going to police, right? So these are real questions, but at the same time, what you are proof of is the ways in which international pressure or shame sometimes goes further than local people saying there's a problem. And so this is another case for solidarity between activists cross-nationally, is that when we can look at what's happening in not just our own communities, but each other's communities and raise an outcry about it, then we're drawing more attention to it. And I know that a big part of your speaking tour that you're on is to raise awareness about one of your colleagues who is currently under attack. And I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about his work and his case right now.
Да, мы действительно сейчас покажем работу Пети Павленского, но перед этим мне... Ты можешь перевести сейчас? Перед этим мне хотелось бы сказать следующее, что, в общем, все достаточно просто. Кейс Pussy Riot происходил в России, в каком-то маленьком суде в центре Москвы.
Yeah, actually, first of all, before we speak about Peter Pavlensky, I want to say that the Pussy Riot case happened in a very small court facility in the center of Moscow.
И благодаря вам, благодаря всем тем людям, которые говорили о нас, которые поддерживали нас, писали нам письма, это дело стало международным делом.
And due to your help, due to all these conversations and all this buzz that you created, this small case became international and became so known all over the world.
И мне кажется, что в тех делах, которые касаются свободы и тем более касаются жизни человека, не существует никаких границ и не должно существовать никаких границ.
And I'm sure that in those cases which actually consider freedom of people and life of people, there are no borders and no obstacles.
И не должно быть никаких границ.
And should not be any borders.
Вот. И да, и мне кажется, что просто кроме нас, кроме тех людей, которые дорожат этой свободой, никто больше защищать друг друга не будет. Если мы этого не сделаем, никто не сделает.
And I think that except us, except those people who really value these freedoms, nobody else would protect us, and nobody else would protect each other. We should do it.
Ну да, сейчас мы покажем песен работы и немножко расскажем о нем.
Now we'll show you the works of our friend Peter Pavlensky, and we'll tell you a little bit about him.
Да, вот это первая песня работы, которую он сделал, пока нас судили, во время нашего суда.
This is the first work of Peter Pavlensky. He made this work exactly during our court of Pussy Riot.
Пока в Москве нас судили, он в Санкт-Петербурге встал перед главным храмом, зашил себе рот.
When we've been prosecuted in Moscow court, Peter Pavlensky, in his native St. Petersburg, he stood just in front of the main cathedral of St. Petersburg, and he saw his mouth, as you see.
И над головой он держал плакат, где было сказано, что акция Pussy Riot была знаменитым переигрыванием цитатой акции Иисуса Христа.
And he held the poster, the big poster, saying that Pussy Riot action used to be the replay, the replica of famous action of Jesus Christ, who expelled merchants from the church.
Вот. Петя сейчас находится в тюрьме. Вот мы сейчас расскажем, в общем, почему.
Peter is in prison now, and we'll tell you why.
Вот можно уже следующий показывать.
It's the next action of Peter called Body.
In this action, as Peter commented later, he tried to represent the feelings of a Russian prisoner, or I think any prisoner he meant. And he was brought there, one of these squares of St. Petersburg, by his assistants, like that, and he lied there for some time until some policemen came around, and they were trying to figure out what to do for quite a long time, and eventually covered him with a blanket.
And now I want to mention a very interesting coincidence. First of all, I think that it's a very, very unusual case when his police investigator was so impressed by Peter's explanation. Peter's very, very clever person, and he speaks very well. So his police investigator finally became his fan and his lawyer. I'm not sure that this very report of this police investigation was made by this very police investigator who became his fan, but look carefully to the signature of the police officer in this report, and now compare his signature and form of Peter's barbed wire. So Peter's art continued after he completed his action. It continued even in police department. Then his next action, maybe you tell a little bit more about this, Ksenia.
Well, in his next action, he literally nailed himself to the ground of a red square.
And actually, I think it's related to not only criminal, but also the logic and expressions of all violent circles. They sometimes sell just like, we will nail your balls, you know, which means that we will stop you, you know. And this is the action which speaks about concentration of Russian people in horrible situation when their balls are nailed and they cannot do anything with this. And maybe this was the first time when police had to be really careful, liberating guy from whatever he did, you see. And this is his next action. Ksenia, could you tell me a little bit about this?
This
Freedom.
Yeah, it's called Freedom, and that was an action in support for Ukrainian Maidan, and it was actually made during Ukrainian Maidan, a revolution, which name was a Maidan. So what Peter did is he invited a few people to participate in a very small version of Ukrainian revolution, and this happened in very central St. Petersburg. And I think he brought some tires there and he burned them, and they had
exactly as people in Maidan did.
Yes,
they
exactly.
burned tires.
They were shouting, they were burning tires, they were raising flags, and that was just a small replica of a revolution that happened in support. His first criminal case was started right after this.
And this was his protest against the new use of psychiatric service against political protesters, because many political protesters, again, they sent for several weeks for psychiatric investigation. By the way, right now, Peter Pavlensky himself is in psychiatric hospital for so-called investigation, and being in psychiatric hospital, he has less opportunities to meet or to speak with his relatives, almost zero opportunities. So he spent already like 3 weeks or 4 weeks in this psychiatric investigation, and this was his kind of forecast that it would happen. He protested against psychiatric abuse by cutting the part of his ear, and this is how it ended, with again with police capture. And this is his last action. Again, I think Ksenia and Masha will tell you about this more.
Да, здесь Пит стоит на фоне горящих дверей.
Peter stands now, and behind his back you see the burning doors of Russian Federal Security Service.
Ну, все, собственно, знают, что ФСБ — это ровно та структура, которая привела Путина к власти.
Everybody knows that FSB, it's the successor of KGB. It's exactly this structure which led Putin to power.
Ну вот, собственно, Петя сделал высказывание относительно этой структуры Путина.
So this is a gesture of Peter regarding this Putin's structure.
Вот он сжег, собственно, их двери довольно успешно.
He burned door of Federal Security Service, and he did it rather successfully.
То есть они сгорели полностью.
Successfully means that the door was really burned completely.
Ну вот, да, собственно, сейчас он в тюрьме.
Now he is in jail.
Понятно, в общем, по какой причине.
It's understandable why.
И мы, наш правозащитный проект, представляет ему адвоката и также поддерживает его семью.
And our human rights project actually provides a lawyer for Peter Pavlensky, and we also support his family.
Я очень надеюсь, что Петино дело будет хотя бы наполовину таким же, как наше, потому что мне кажется, что он заслуживает того, чтобы быть на этой сцене гораздо в большей степени, чем я.
And I hope that Peter's case would be at least half that known as our case, because I think that Peter deserves to be in the stage much more than myself. I could add that during his first investigation in police department, Peter said that he could accept only accusation on terrorism, because he was accused on so-called vandalism, which I think it's up to 3 years in prison. But just
Up to 7.
7? Okay. But I think that they discussed something like 3 for him. But just a few months before, 2 people, one of them is film director Oleg Sentsov and his friend Kolchenko, have been sentenced for 20 and 10 years in prison just because they were Crimean activists and they were against Russian occupation of Crimea, and they did more or less the same as Peter did, but they did it with a just small headquarter of a Russian ruling party, Putin's party, United Russia, and they have got accusation on terrorism and got 20 and 10 years. So when Peter found out that he is accused on vandalism, he says, no, I would not participate in the process until you would not accuse me in terrorism.
So one of the things we also talked about with this, is that the critics might point to this and say, well, this is a stunt, right? That this is so this is just somebody trying to get attention, doing something outrageous. Why should we care about it? Why is it important?
Но это важно прежде всего потому, что, например, путинское правительство и вот эта власть, она не боится делать каких-то смелых жестов. Например, в феврале прошлого года был убит главный оппозиционный политик прямо у стен Кремля. Он был застрелен ночью.
We have to protect those people, first of all, because Putin's government, they are not afraid to do like really, say, brave gestures. 1 year ago, one of the most strong oppositional politicians, Boris Nemtsov, was murdered just near the Kremlin walls.
И эта власть не боится стрелять, она не боится развязывать войны.
This power is not afraid to shoot people. This power is not afraid to start wars.
И мне кажется, что Петина акция — это один из тех немногих жестов, когда мы показываем, что мы тоже не боимся.
And Peter's action is one of the few gestures when we show that we are not afraid as well.
Поэтому, да. Потому что сейчас, да, действительно, можно, наверное, сказать, что это типа незаконно жечь двери.
Yeah, you should say that, we could say that it's not legal, of course, to burn doors.
Но оккупировать президентское кресло на 17 лет тоже не очень законно.
But to occupy presidential position, presidential chair for 17 years, we think it's not legal as well.
So one of the things that becomes very clear is that creating public spectacles and being artists who speak out against injustice, whether it's here or in Russia, creates an alternative public record, right? That it draws attention to things that otherwise, power invents itself by hiding dissent. And one of the things you've done very well is make it clear that there is a dissent.
Но это правда, оно правда есть.
Yeah, but there is a dissent. It exists.
Но мне кажется, что, то есть, не стоит говорить о том, что мы были одними людьми, которые это показали. Мне кажется, что это показали все вы, все те люди, которые сделали наше дело известным, сделали наше дело действительно персонально важным для каждого.
We shouldn't say that we were the ones who did something to show this dissent, because again, I want to repeat that it's due to all you who tried your best to make our case public, to make our case known, and to make our case personally important for all of you.
Вот.
Let me add one thing. I think sometimes the girls are too modest, and I just want to stress one thing. They spoke about their human rights project, Zona Prava, and about their media, but there's one unbelievable fact. For me, it's really unbelievable. I've seen how they started to build it, and all of a sudden, I see more and more quotations. Like every day, there are quotations from Zona Media, Zona Media, Zona Media, more than from like major media in Russia. And then I see statistics, and it's official statistics, that Zona Media right now is on 11th place. Imagine, 11th place all over the country, not only among political or human rights media, but in overall media, including tabloids and everything, in so-called quotation rate. So congratulations. And one more thing I want to stress, that I'm so much impressed that they do this investigation of prisons and trying to improve the relations in prison, because we always consider prison as something scary. But traveling with several interesting people to different prisons when Nadia and Masha were still in prison, and then helping them to visit these prisons in Scandinavian countries, most of all, I've seen a very interesting thing, and I understood very interesting, very important thing, that the prison is as important institution as kindergarten, school, university. It's the matter of fact. Prisons exist. And of course, conditions in American prisons might be better than conditions in Russian prison, but unfortunately, I would say that the approach is more or less the same. The concept is anyway punishment, and the concept is anyway kind of humiliation. What we found in several Danish and especially in Norwegian prison, that they do like absolutely different thing. It's a real correctional facilities, and a lot of prisoners, they really are grateful to prisons for changing their lives. And it's like incredible thing to show people that prison might be human institution, it might be real correctional facilities, and I like it, and I think we can change it. And these girls, they do everything to change it.
So we wanted to take a few questions from the audience. So if you're somebody who has a question that you would like to raise, we will be lining up. We'll only have time for about 5 or 6 questions. So we'll ask people just to not get their hopes up if they're around the corner. But also, if somebody has asked a question similar to the one you were hoping to ask, maybe we could call that the question, if that makes sense. Do we have people?
Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
My Russian is possibly worse than your English, so I will speak English. Please excuse me. I am a musicologist, so I have a musical question, if you do not mind. Why did you choose punk music as the vehicle for your protests and actions?
Но это не был какой-то академический выбор.
It was not kind of academic choice.
Ну, мы просто действительно настолько несколько людей как-то более-менее умеют, по крайней мере, держать в руках гитару.
We had several people who at least could hold guitars in their hands.
Да. И нам просто хотелось сделать максимально громкое и высказывание.
We simply wanted to do maximally loud message.
Вот.
That's it.
Thank you.
First of all, I just want to say, я люблю тебя и еще работать. I love you and your work. But how do you suggest starting like really effective activism in the U.S. and I mean starting a global activist community? what do you see as your vision?
Ну и глобальную структуру строить.
Мне кажется, что вообще любой активизм и вообще любая работа, и все, что бы то ни было, оно начинается с того, что ты действительно чувствуешь.
Every kind of activism and every kind of work starts from whatever you really feel.
Да, и если, допустим, есть что-то, боже мой, если есть что-то, против чего ты не можешь не бороться, значит, вот это и надо делать.
If there is something bad against which you cannot stand from fighting, then you should fight.
Да. Ну и в таком случае обязательно встретятся люди, которым важно то же самое.
And in your way, you inevitably will find people, you'll meet people for whom the same things are important.
Вот.
Спасибо.
Hi. I recently listened to a podcast by someone named Miriam Kaba, which you might not be familiar with her, coming from Russia. But she has this idea, or she talked about how prisons, one of their functions is to hold people so that we cannot revolt. And I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were about that.
Ну, то есть, насколько тюрьмы могут быть реально революционизированы, изменены?
Они могут. Дело в том, что тюрьма — это такой же институт, как все остальные. Единственное, что тюрьма, она очень хорошо, наверное, лучше, чем другие институты, показывает, как работает государство.
Prison is the same kind of institution as any other state institutions, but prison maybe shows better how the government acts.
Потому что тюрьма наделяет ее работников, наделяет тюремных чиновников такой вот, можно сказать, чистой властью.
Because prison gives its officers, let's say, pure power.
Той властью внутри стен, которая, если мы это не контролируем, не может быть увидена, безнаказанной властью.
I mean, this very power behind some hidden walls, which cannot be seen from outside if we do not control it.
И именно такая власть, она как бы наиболее четко показывает порядок, который существует в стране.
And this very power shows you in the most clear way the order which exists in this particular country. But you spoke about exact theory how the situation in prison and the very prison concept could be revolutionized, right? Right? Is it correct?
Я думаю, что здесь
Because
есть...
maybe we all a little bit misunderstood your question.
No, well, that was definitely a really good answer. But also just
Но мне хотелось бы сказать пару слов о том, как это можно изменить. Это, в общем, достаточно просто. Нужно просто забыть о слове наказание вообще, как о страшном сне.
I think that I know how we can revolutionize the function of prison. First of all, we have to forget about the very word punishment, and we think that punishment is like a very bad dream.
Во-первых, нету никакого наказания, во-вторых, нету никаких заключенных. Нету никаких заключенных, которые остаются в тюрьме навсегда. Их не существует.
First of all, there is no any punishment. Second, there is no prisoners who exist in prison forever.
Люди выходят из тюрем, и они выходят такими, какими отчасти делает их тюрьма.
Sooner or later, people are released from prison, and they leave the prison being those creatures which are anyway kind of those people who are impacted by prison, who in a way made by prison.
И тюрьма должна просто подготавливать этого человека к тому моменту, как он пересечет эти ворота, и ничего больше.
And the prison should really prepare the person to meet this moment when this person crosses the border of prison and nothing else. To prepare for this new life.
Мне кажется, что образование — это вот самая классная штука.
And the most classic thing is education. So you mean that prison should be, first of all, educational facility?
Universities.
Universities.
I want to, because the person who just asked the question brought up Mariam Kaba. This is a really important activist here in Chicago who started an organization called Project NIA, which is specifically focused on the school-to-prison pipeline. So if you are listening and you've become intrigued about how to get involved in anti-prison activism or prison reform, both internationally and at home, I really encourage you to speak her name. Mariam Kaba is an extraordinary woman, and to look into the work of Project NIA.
Thank you.
While we're at it.
Здравствуйте. Спасибо вам. 4 года назад я был в Москве. Я увидел вас в телевизоре каждый день.
I've been in Moscow 4 years ago, and I've seen you on TV every day.
My question's about the law that was used against you, although called the hooliganism law. How sometime, I guess what I want to ask is, how do you feel that law is reflecting society when some of you are imprisoned in that law and others, such as football hooligans, are not used for that law?
That wasn't like usual hooliganism. It was like hooliganism motivated by religious hatred.
Right.
So, да, если у вас просто обычное хулиганство, то это просто вот до 15 суток ареста. А если добавляется религиозная ненависть, то тогда это до 7 лет.
If you are a regular hooligan, then it's up to 15 days of administrative arrest. But if it's hooliganism motivated by religious hatred, it's up to 7 years.
Да, и действительно, вот по этой статье это не какой-то специальный закон, это просто статья. Но по ней вот до нас как бы не судили никого.
And this is like a regular penal code paragraph, but before our court, I don't remember that somebody was actually sentenced using this very penal code paragraph.
It's not like I don't remember. I checked. There was like no people.
Yeah, no people.
Да, но на самом деле это вообще очень просто сейчас посадить человека в России вообще по любой статье. Это такой сталинский принцип. Тут говорил, был бы человек, а статья найдется.
And now it's very easy to put people behind the bar in current Russia using any kind of chapter of penal code. Somebody says that Stalin said that it should be a person, and we'll find the proper chapter, article, paragraph. How do you call it? Penal code chapter, yeah, chapter, yes, article, yes.
Расскажи про госизмену.
Well, there is one article that, Sash, can you help me translate it, please? Госизмена.
Государственная измена.
It's interesting. It's state to being like unfaithful to state.
Yes,
yeah.
possibly. The thing is, like, this article hasn't. What? This article hasn't got a very proper explanation. What it says basically is whether if you do anything that somehow puts in danger or Russia itself, like the whole country, somehow.
It's actually betrayal of the state. Betrayal of the state.
Betrayal of the state. Yeah,
betrayal of the state.
Yeah, that's how it translates.
It's up to 12.
It doesn't actually. Yeah, it doesn't actually say what you need to do to be accused of this thing. It actually, like, whatever you do that can court decide that put Russian security or Russia itself or Russian government in danger somehow. If you do this, whatever it is, you can go to jail for up to 20 years. And one of the recent cases that happened very close to the border of Russia and Ukraine, a woman was on a bus, and it was actually when the Eastern Ukraine conflict was happening. A woman was on a bus, and she heard someone speaking about Russian soldiers that are about to cross the Ukrainian border to go to eastern part of Ukraine to fight for the new government that was just to fight in the conflict that was happening. And so she called the Ukrainian ambassador, yeah, I think that was ambassador. She called him and she said she'd heard this thing. And she was accused in betrayal of the state. And she is a mother of six children. She was facing up to 20 years. And it was a pure luck, and thanks to a very good lawyer and thanks to all the attention that she immediately got because of all of the media just started publishing articles about it, she was released. But she spent some time in one of the prisons of Moscow just for making a call and just for saying that there are Russian soldiers who are about to go to the eastern Ukraine to participate in the conflict. Because, you know, from the TVs and from the radios and what Putin was saying in his conferences, there were no Russian soldiers there in eastern Ukraine. So this is one of the things that can lead you to the betrayal of a state article, for example.
Да, в общем, все достаточно просто. В тюрьму можно угодить за что угодно.
Yeah, it's rather simple now. You can get to prison for anything.
Не обязательно быть хулиганом. Вот один наш друг, например, попал в тюрьму за пиратство.
It's absolutely not necessary to be hooligan. For instance, one of our friends is in prison for piracy.
Yeah.
Not computer piracy, but
like classical
piracy.
Да, так что.
Have you got pirates in Lake Michigan?
But I know, at least in the United States, a big chunk of the prison system is privatized. So I'd like to know your thoughts on what kind of effect that has on what you're talking about.
Like the last part of your.
Just what effect does the privatization of the prison system have on the topics you guys are talking about?
Ну, если мы говорим про американские тюрьмы, про американские частные тюрьмы, правильно я поняла? Да. Саша, ты можешь задать этот вопрос?
You are talking about American private prisons, right?
Yes.
And we didn't understand the last
I think I
sentence.
Understand.
Just what effect does it have on the prison system?
Ну, это like one of the, I think, most terrible things about United States prison system I know. Но смысл в том, что вот, собственно, Сесили Макмиллан, которую мы посещали в Райкерс, она нам очень много потом уже, когда вышла, рассказывала про частные тюрьмы в Штатах.
Cecil McMillan, this activist of Occupy Wall Street, whom we met in Rikers Island prison in New York, when she was released, she told us a lot about private prisons in the United States.
И мне кажется, что, собственно, единственная цель этих тюрем — это делать профит.
And I think that the only motivation, the only goal of this prisons is to make profit.
В России такого нет.
We have nothing like this in Russia.
У нас другая проблема, у нас такой пост-ГУЛАГ.
But we have another problem. We have post-ГУЛАГ.
Но, собственно, мне кажется, что ценность той ситуации, которая существует в Штатах, у вас есть реальная возможность все поменять.
But the value of whatever you have in states is that you have a real opportunity to change everything. But by the way, you told me about the profit of the prisons in Russia as well. They make profit, but in a different way.
In a different way. Yes. Ну вот, собственно, мне кажется, это важно сказать об одной вещи. Мы слышали от нескольких правозащитных организаций, с которыми мы встречались в Штатах, то, что политики не говорят о тюрьмах, потому что это невыгодно для политиков.
We've heard about from several human rights organizations whom we met in the United States that politicians usually avoid talking about prisons because it's not kind of profitable for them to speak about prisons.
Потому что, как они думают, это не принесет им много голосов.
Because they think that speaking about prisons would not bring them a lot of voices.
Потому что консервативная часть населения считает, что те люди, которые оказались в тюрьме, должны быть максимально наказаны.
Because the conservative part of population thinks that those people who are in prison, who occur to be in prison, they must be punished maximally.
Ну, вот, собственно, в вашей власти это изменить и заставить ваших политиков говорить о том, что ситуацию, в частности, с частными тюрьмами нужно менять.
But I think that it's absolutely in your power to change it. You can speak about this, you can change it, and definitely you can change this situation with private prisons. And you could make politicians to speak about this.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take one last question.
Thanks. So I have a question actually about something that was mentioned just a moment ago, which is, I think it is possibly an American phenomenon, the school to prison pipeline, which basically is just that we've become aware in the States that our compulsory education systems are kind of selecting for who ends up in our prisons. And I'm wondering if there is any relationship between your education systems in Russia and who you find incarcerated later, and if not, do you think early education, like what is the role of education as an institution in like building activism and kind of combating some of these issues?
Ну, честно говоря, я никогда не училась в американской школе, я училась в российской школе.
First of all, I never was a pupil of American school. I always learned in Russian school.
Да, и я могу сказать, что после века Советского Союза у нас гуманитарное образование было практически разрушено.
And I would say that after the end of Soviet Union, the humanitarian education was almost destroyed, practically destroyed in Russia.
Огромное количество гуманитарной интеллигенции было в сталинские годы или расстреляно, или просто выслано из страны.
The huge number of humanitarian intelligentsia, as we say in Russia, in Stalinist years have been killed or expelled from the country.
И поэтому, как бы, выражение своего мнения, выражение своей позиции и вообще попытки что-то изменить, это совершенно не те вещи, которые прививаются нашими школами.
And the wish to express your sincere opinion, to express your will, to express your point of view, it's not those qualities which are educated in our schools.
Ну и, собственно, наверное, поэтому мне эти вещи стали так дороги, вот мне лично.
Maybe that's why these very values became so dear for me personally.
И мне кажется, что очень важно помнить о том, что не существует какой-то идеальной системы, но существуют люди, которым важны и дороги другие люди.
It's very important to remember that there is no any ideal system. The ideal system doesn't exist, but people exist who are important and dear for other people.
Ну и, например, собственно, когда я была за решеткой, самые единственные хорошие моменты случались тогда, когда тюремные чиновники отходили от каких-то правил и просто поступали по-человечески.
And actually, when I was behind the bars, the most nice and touching moments happened when prison officers just ignored some strict rules and just behaved in a human way.
Вот. А ты что думаешь? Ты про Лондон, может быть?
Образование как может быть изменено, чтобы активных людей растить, а не потенциальных заключенных?
I've got it here. I have to. I totally agree on the instructions vs thinking part, because what we have, I'm not very sure. And as far as I know, it's not that bad in American education system, but in Russia right now, from the very first year of your school, you are taught not to think, but to follow the instructions exactly, like one by one. And it's very often, and I know this from my friends' children, and from my nephews, and well, from many people, that sometimes children, they just get the worst grade for example, changing, for expressing their thoughts in the written work, for example. If they are asked to write a work about some book, they are not allowed to express their thoughts. They have to write exactly what they are being taught. And this continues through the whole school to the universities, and I only saw the difference. I never knew that something it might work in a different way until I got to London, where actually they told me, well, as an artist, you should do whatever you feel like doing. There are no rules, there are no instructions, and there is nothing that you should follow. You have to express yourself the way you think you should express yourself. And this was the first time I faced it, and I was really shocked, because it was like, and what am I supposed to do now? Because, well, just give me something to start with, like the first part of the instruction. The second one, I'm going to follow it. And, well, I got used to it very quickly, because this is this is the way you should work. But that was shocking in the very beginning, so.
So we are pretty much out of time. I wonder if you have any closing comments you'd like to make to leave us with.
Окей. В общем, вы видели сейчас вот работы Пети Павленского. И вот у нас есть футболки, которые вот рядом с которыми мы будем, и на них, собственно, изображены вот эти вот двери, которые вы видели.
You've seen the works of our friend Peter Pavlensky recently, and we have T-shirts. We actually will go there and sell these T-shirts ourselves. And in some of these T-shirts, you'll see these very doors which Peter Pavlensky burned.
Ну и вот, собственно, все деньги, которые мы с вами выручим, они пойдут Оксане, его подруге, и маме его дочек.
And all money which we will get from these sales will get to Oksana, the girlfriend of Peter and mother of his two daughters.
Ну и, собственно, его адвоката.
And also to his lawyers.
Вот такие прозаичные вещи, но мне кажется, они ровно они меняют мир.
And probably it's this kind of simple things, but these very things change the world.
I also have to say, and maybe it somehow repeats what Masha said already, and this is very important to keep an eye on what's going on all around the world. And we research Russian prisons. Unfortunately, we don't know much about what's happening. We don't know as much about international situation in other prisons in different countries as we know about Russian prisons. But we know for sure that during the Pussy Riot trial and during the time that girls were in prison, all the attention, it helped a lot, and it still helps somehow for prisoners to be safe in prison. If the guards know the world is watching, if the guards know the news are being published, that people are discussing, that people are sharing information, that keeps them safe. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise as much awareness and to bring as much attention as we can to all the situations of all the political and not political prisoners, prisoners who experience violence or are being attacked or abused in prisons. So, referring to the previous questions about activism and what you can do, the most important thing is just to keep sharing information, to keep spreading the word, and this is what influences people, and this is what inspires everyone, and please, just do it.
I want to thank Thalia Hall for hosting this conversation. I want to thank Lisa Lee, thank the Illinois Humanities Council, and of course thank our speakers and for you for coming to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.